Wayne Herschel, in his book, The Hidden Records, he offers a revelation that will not only rewrite history, but the history of our origins as we know it. Wayne offers an array of new earth-shattering findings linking all the pyramid civilizations. He reveals the ultimate secret of the Sphinx and how it speaks of all the pyramids mimicking prominent stars. He proves that all 50 pyramids of Lower Egypt represent a single star map of adjoining constellations along the edge of the Milky Way. He produces compelling evidence that an important segment of the pyramid star map theme is found across the globe. He reveals the human codex found in a star map at Stonehenge and confirms that the gods of the ancients were cosmic visitors. In a historic first, the star of the gods is deciphered from the collection of star maps, and he unveils the definitive star map on Mars. He contends that ultimately all humanity is descendant from an arrival over 17,000 years ago from a recently documented nearby sun-like star. Wayne will also speak tonight about his more recent Hebrew Solomon key parchment breakthrough and an unexpected forgotten symbol on it that cracks the cipher. Recently, the BBC has confirmed that author Dan Brown is expected to include this controversial pictogram cipher in his next book due out this fall. So welcome from South Africa, Wayne. It's such a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for joining me. I think we're having
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, can you hear me? Okay.
We can. I mean, I'm in New York and you're in South Africa. It's amazing what technology offers us these days. So Wayne, I want to get started right away, and I want to let everybody know that's listening. I've gotten tremendous amounts of emails, and people have posted on Facebook with tons of interest in tonight's show. We will be taking calls towards the end of the show. However, we do request that they are topic specific and related to what we've been talking about on the show tonight. And are you welcome to submit an in-quick question on Achieve Radio homepage if you would like to ask it over the air, in case you can't get through on the phone lines. So, Wayne, what a great story you have. And I have to say that in all my years of travel and going to sacred sites, I've been fascinated with them. Everyone who listens to my show or knows me personally knows that this is truth. And so when I came across your book, I was extraordinarily excited about the theme and the topic, and I think what you do is take your work one step further, actually several steps further than most of the more well-known star correlation theories that many of the more well-known authors have put out there in the world. So thank you once again for joining me. Where do you want to start? You have so much.
I think... let's start with the Egyptian pyramids. Obviously, the Baval theory with the three pyramids of Giza matching up with Orion. I'm completely in support of that. That's three pyramids, three stars in the Orion constellation. But what I did was I took the scale and tried something else, because I wanted something that explained all 50 pyramids. And if all 50 pyramids matched alongside the Nile, it stands to reason that it would be a ring of constellations going right around the Earth, with the Milky Way obviously being 360 degrees of sky. And it wasn't really much long after that, just after the book came out. I think it was probably about a year or so after the book came out, with I think it was called the Orion Mystery. I managed to correlate the whole 50 of them, and noticed there was one right in the middle of the pyramid field was the proverbial X that marks the spot. It was an obelisk temple. The ultimate monument of Egypt corresponded with one star that was unique, completely unique to all the others. All the others were predominantly, I would call them giant-class stars that are nothing like our sun. However, the one in the middle of the star map, the obelisk correlation in Abasir, had a sun-like star correlation, which stood out like a sore thumb.
I have to say, I traveled to Abasir this past March, and I was there, and I thoroughly examined that site myself personally, and it's an extraordinary site, and it's very rarely visited by tourists. And I have a really unique fascination for that site because it was so different than so many of the other sites that I saw this past spring. Now, before we get into that, there's something that I'd like to share with listeners. You had two extraordinary experiences that I think, when you also claim, have shaped your point of reference for all of this research, from that of a typical scholar to somebody who is much, much more open-minded to bigger theories, different alternative history theories. One was a UFO sighting and a near-death experience. Would you like to just share shortly, a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's going back quite a while now. Time has flown since those days. Two life-altering experiences. The first one would be the sighting of UFOs when I was a teenager, pretty much early 70s, around then. Driving home one night, I was doing a TV show as one of these, I was like the little kid in a science show. My uncle was actually the host of the science program, and we're coming back from the studio, and my dad looked out the window and he said, "Goodness me, look at this. This looks like an aircraft is coming down to crash." And there was a group of lights in a V formation, and we kind of pulled to the side of the road, and all the other cars that were on the street, it was quite a busy time, were doing the same, and we were all watching this thing come down, and it was airspaces between the lights, so it was completely something different. It was something, a grouping of lights that came into the city and then zoomed back out again. As they were zooming back out the city again, they could you could see that they were accelerating, and that exact same sighting was in the newspaper the next day. It was seen by obviously thousands of people, and it was seen in South America, I think 20 minutes later from that moment of time, which is pretty exciting stuff for a kid.
I'd say. And I think that the reason I wanted to start off with this before we get more in depth into what you were just speaking of is because I really think that it's somebody who hasn't experienced something like this would definitely approach these sites from a different perspective. And so I find it really interesting and fascinating that your experiences opened up your intuition and allowed you to have an extraordinary out-of-body experience with your near-death experience as well. And so you saw something beyond the veil that this had to be really monumental in helping you come back and go to these places and almost open up the codes, I would say. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. The second life experience would be the near-death, out-of-body, typical, proverbial traveling out of your body when the heart has stopped. I had a motorcycle accident in an endurance race. That was probably around about, let me think now, dates are terrible, around about, let's say, early 80s. And I was out for 20 minutes without a pulse. I was under the motorcycle. The helmet had pushed into my neck and probably choked me. And the guy that resuscitated me said I was completely blue and thought I was a little bit too far gone. But in that time, being out of the body, I remember the sense of relaxation and the thought control. As you think, you move. As you're looking around the area, your thought control isn't, and I was, as a sort of an intuitive sort of person in this state, kept testing it and trying to figure out what was going on. But the awareness that you actually could be dead is the least of your worries. You're more interested in what's going on and how exciting it is to be where you are. And I believe I came back, I went down this tunnel of light, the proverbial tunnel of light thing, and I believe I came back with a lot more than I left with, because I was literally jabbering for about 2 hours after I came to about what I experienced. And I made my father listen to me. I'm going to say some weird stuff, but I have got a bit of a head injury, obviously, because I had this accident, and I'm worried that I'm going to forget. So, I've just got him to recall the main part of my experience. And, I guess those two experiences in life, you see things differently. There's no, let's read somebody's book on near death. Maybe it's real, maybe it's not. You've had it. So you've got this point of reference. And the part coming back was more than I left with. I believe I had an encounter with the proverbial tree of life in the cosmos, the nucleus of the universe. And this is where we come from. This is the spiritual nucleus, so to speak, of all souls. They even call it the Akashic reference.
You talk about, Wayne, after you had these experiences, that you had an insatiable appetite on subjects like astronomy, the pyramids, and ancient events, an obsession that you claim would ultimately lead to your intensive and relentless research. So it really was the marking point of what led you on your path, right?
Absolutely, yeah, I'll explain that a bit more. Having seen some most unusual things, I would say the who we are and where we come from aspect to start with, having seen a whole lot of images and recalling them over the years, in deep meditation from, I believe, was that out-of-body experience, I could go out to a simple library and look for the evidence that I had seen. So it's kind of cheating in research, so to speak, that I've got these answers already. All I had to do was go out and find the evidence, were they real, and every single thing that I'd seen, heard in this weird state was basically there in the library, and I could just find it.
I think that really is what makes you stand out with your research from other people who have gone down along these lines. So getting back to Egypt, thank you for sharing that with us. So you were talking how your star map is different, your interpretation is different from Robert Bauval's star map. Does he know about your findings? Did you share these with him?
Yes, actually quite early. I remember phoning Robert pretty much a year after finding it, thinking, this guy, he's my favorite author, I'd love him to hear about it. And I remember him on the telephone saying that he was looking into the theory and wasn't quite sure how all of them are connected in any way. And it was many years later that he brought out his second book, and he agreed with the main part of it, the Pleiades and the obelisk correlation. That was pretty much all he believed in. But, people are going to say, oh, gosh, maybe I'm seeing things, just joining dots and making stars fit. But, this has been looked at by astronomers, and I made it free to the public as well. If anybody wants to see the correlations, it's online. You just go to thehiddenrecords.com, and at the beginning of the story, just click underneath the carousel, start in Egypt, and you'll see the pictures and compare them to the actual star photographs. The correlations by magnitude, big pyramids, big stars, small pyramids, small stars. We've got massive cluster groupings, all matching, for example, Andromeda, which is a very complex constellation. To have all the pyramids in the area of Saqqara matching up as a group, that is just mind-blowing.
Now, your book was so controversial when you first put it together that it was denied publication for 3 years. Why do you think that was the case?
Well, you know what? I sat for that long period of time waiting for one of the biggest publishers in Europe, which had promised that everything's going to be fine. We're going to go ahead with it. We just need to check out some of your material, which is fine. But the next thing I was getting calls from people all over the world, one from Australia, and somebody saying, we're looking at your work. I've got this from another scholar. I want to just question a few things. And I was getting these weird calls. People were all looking at my material, obviously part of the evaluation process, and my stuff is being handed around. It's pretty much open air. Somebody will run with it. So I figured it was far too much of a risk. Something is really not right here. I'll take it to a local TV channel and see if they want to cover the footage. And that's how we did it in South Africa.
Well, I'm very glad that this book is out. And in fact, I have really been captured by this research. I have actually sent several copies of this book to some Native American elders and some colleagues of mine and some personal friends of mine, because I feel so strongly that this book is really well put together, really well done. And I really think that you're onto something here with your research, and I can see why it calls many people. So you have star maps that go along, with the Vatican, with Washington D.C., the Holy Grail, the Sumerians, the Persians, the Babylonians, the Incans. I mean, you have gone through so many different cultures. And now, do they all seem to have the same kind of star map, or do they use different constellations? Are they all seeming to tell the same story?
You know what, this is the amazing part. I would say, predominant part of the earliest ancient, that'll be Sumeria, the Akkadian Empire, pretty much the earliest pyramid civilizations use the area around the Pleiades, where these three sun-like stars are found, as the main reference. And the Egyptians showed the Pleiades as a leg of the bull, and it's not surprising, it's in Taurus. It is a leg-shaped constellation. That was the easy part, having found a coffin that actually filled in the stars. It matched the Pleiades beautifully as well. But the Sumerians were more obsessed perhaps even than the Egyptians. They also worshipped these gods that looked like they had birds' heads. They were probably wearing astronaut-type helmets with a sun visor, would look like a beak of a bird. If you look at some of the Mayan depictions as well, they all seem to have this obsession for the same things. And, they use different constellations in different other civilizations later on. For example, the Angkor Empire of the Khmer use Perseus as the general layout of all the temples and use the Pleiades in its earliest, oldest, first area called Rolios. And there's another reference as well with Orion, more towards the Vatican era, let's say pre-Christian, and following the Christian era, they were using Orion as the main reference to find the star by following the three belt stars of Orion. That is the first thing and most easiest way to find it in the heavens, is just following into Taurus, three stars in a row, and you need to travel an exact amount. That was the complicated bit, because it's now, the constellation is not really that close to it. There's a definite measurement from these three stars, and that was a big breakthrough, just finding out where I could find a reference to the measurement part, how they measured in the ancient times from one star to the next. So that was a big breakthrough later on.
And so do you think that this knowledge was passed down at a certain time and given to all cultures, and that's why that they built the temples in the layouts that they did?
Yeah, I think if we sort of look at a chronology of the whole thing, it looks like there was this mass colonization 17,000 years ago. And by the way, it didn't just start 17,000 years ago. There's forbidden archaeology that shows almost three different waves of, call it visitation by advanced beings pre-17,000 years ago. But the main wave of colonization globally seemed to happen in a large way 17,000 years ago. And I think the amazing thing about it is they all started off very quickly. They all had this obsession building pyramids. And these visitors, I think, came back many generations later, and perhaps after the biblical flood event, because it looks like all that advanced technology is gone. I mean, we don't have any record of it today. We just have these very weird buildings, and like the Inca block buildings and things like this around the world that are unexplainable technology. And I think that would be perhaps 10,000 years ago onwards, we were retaught again from scratch. And we obviously worship these visitors, our brethren, our ancestors coming back. And that is the weird part. That's our real weird history, that we have an ancient aspect to us learning about ourselves again, and perhaps building the pyramids only then. You know, it might even be that the pyramids were built after the flood. It's very hard to date these things because it's stone. You know, you can't date stone yet. We haven't found an accurate way of dating it. So this is this weird history that we have. And, of course, over time, when they came back again, even through the Christ era and the Renaissance era, I'm pretty sure we will still worship them as angels that came from the heavens in these celestial chariots that shone like the sun. And we would think they were gods.
Everybody listening, Wayne's websites are keyofsolomon.net, oneism.org, and thehiddenrecords.com. All three of those links are on Achieve Radio homepage, as well as my radio homepage and my website, hillaryraimo.com. Getting back to that, Wayne, it's something really caught my attention at the Temple of Hatshepsut in Luxor that you had visited, and you cover quite a bit in your book. You had gone to a very special tomb and discovered a very special star map, so to speak, in there. Would you like to share your experience and what you found there?
Sure. It would be nice, obviously, having these pyramid or temple layouts with large monuments on the ground, matching the sky, as above, so below, the old Hermes legend reenacted. I was hoping I could find a more sort of two-dimensional star map in a tomb somewhere. And if you look at the earliest tombs in Egypt, they have the biggest clues. The biggest clue, of course, is in the near the Hatshepsut temple area in Deir Bari. There's a tomb called Senmut or Senenmut, which is really a remarkable tomb because it's one of the deepest cutting tombs that goes right down into the bowels of the earth. It's not even safe for people to go in there because of the flaky sides of the tomb. It's so old. And in this tomb, it has the exact pyramid star map reinterpreted, if you can call it that way, mythologically on one side of the roof, and almost astronomically on the other side of the tomb roof. And the two sort of showing the Pleiades and a little star to the side of it, and a beam of light coming down to earth, from the heavens down to earth, unlike the Jacob's Ladder biblical event. And it shows all the gods standing on terra firma, and the narrator pointing up this beam of light to the star and Pretty much, according to an Egyptologist who wants to remain anonymous for this, because this is kind of challenging scholastic interpretation. They're basically saying that here is the place of our gods. Here is our place of dwelling, and we're here on terra firma.
And so the leg of the bull, I know you talk about at length, too, as being one of the significant symbols that they have left as kind of a way to find their way through these star maps. So the leg of the bull always seems to be pointing to what you term the mystery star. And do you think that this mystery star is, in fact, the enigma that these civilizations were trying to, without so much as coming out and saying that this is the treasure, so to speak, but we're going to build and we're going to lead, and you follow the clues and put the pieces of the puzzle together to figure it out yourself? Do you think that that star, that mystery star, which you say is represented by Abu Sir in Egypt as the Star of Ra, correct?
Yes, definitely.
Do you think that that is the mystery star that they were leading us to, through their clues?
Well, if you look at the general star obsession with the Ra text, the earliest pyramid text as well, speaking about when the king becomes a star when he dies. The whole interpretation of death in Egyptology is a gray area. If you take all for example, the pyramid text and read the utterances, and it says at least 23 times the king is not dead, he is still alive. I'm convinced completely that the first mistake in archaeology is assuming the word dead means, as we know, the body is putrefying and not not going to be revived. I think in these pyramid places, these sarcophagi were places where people could lie, and the initiate could be induced out of their body and travel the cosmos and come back and tell their story. Because it says right at the end of the utterance, dance, I think it was Unas, dance, rejoice, tell us of your great journey, where have you been, and this is kind of like the guy waking up, and that's one of the oldest writings in history in the Egyptian records. And so it's written there that these stars, and this particular star, as you are asking, is the X that marks the spot. It's the most important one out of a grouping of three. Now, this is quite important because we have three sun-like stars in this area, and all three make a beautiful, almost equilateral triangle sort of layout. And all three have been tested in astronomy. It fit the templates at an ancient epoch. And this is amazing for any astronomer to see this.
And so is that what makes Abu Sir in Egypt so special?
Pretty much so. I mean, you've got the most amount of pyramids. We have obviously the sad thing is that the X that marks the spot, the giant obelisk, would have been a phenomenal sight if it was still, visible today. It isn't a pile of rubble. It was gold capped. Probably an earthquake, even 2,000 years ago, could have been responsible for bringing it down, although it was probably gold layered over it. Those blocks are long gone. But to see the size of the pyramids, obviously in Egypt, I still think that's the most beautiful place on the earth to look at ancient mysteries and the temples and the tombs and the artifacts in the museum. The papyrus drawings are absolutely amazing. The oldest papyrus drawing, I have a copy of it. I'm looking at it now in my lounge, showing Nut, the sky goddess. And if you look at the papyrus that I've got there, and I've put it on the keyofsolomon.net website, I believe we have evidence of Ra landing on terra firma. An amazing place is where he lands, the back of the Sphinx. And it's got the leg of the bull next to it, showing that it's from the heavens. It connects to the leg of the bull. So it's like the story is a pictogram, follows by touching one another, each pictograph touching one another, that he came from the cosmos, from the Pleiades, and landed at the back of the Sphinx. And scholars have looked at this and thought, well, that's probably symbolic of the ceremonial fan stuck on the back of the Sphinx. So this is a really unique-looking ceremonial fan. It's got three legs, it's got a dome, and it's got light radiating from it. So stuff like this passes through history as hidden records, or in most cases put back into an archive and stored until one day we can figure it out. A lot of the things that I've found have been obscure documents. I mean, this is as if society just doesn't want to deal with it, or it's part of secret society and supposed to be undercovered.
I think your second, I agree with your second theory on that. I think that this information is known by select groups and select people. And I think that it's been hidden from people on purpose so that, there's other, consequences to keeping this kind of knowledge away from people. And I also think that's one of the reasons why you've had so much trouble publishing this. Now, let's move on to Tikal in Guatemala and find the connection and the correspondence now. And I'd also like to talk at some point the Teotihuacan in Mexico, because your book has inspired me to travel there in October to visit the sites based on this work. And so let's move to South America and Central America and talk a little bit about how you came to going from Egypt to these places.
Yeah, sure. Okay, if we're looking at other pyramid sites, it was early in my research. I figured, okay, let's look at the Mayan culture, the Aztecs, the Olmecs. Perhaps I'll find an Olmec pyramid site, but it's kind of a gray area which civilization merged into the other. So in my book reference, I just refer to all as the Maya culture, and quite amazed to find that the biggest pyramid civilization is nothing like Egypt. It would be Mesoamerica. There are something, and these are estimates still, something towards between 50,000 and 100,000 temples out of the whole area, right from the bottom of the Yucatan Peninsula all the way up to pretty much Mexico. There are ruins going all the way through the forest, and only a portion of them have been fully excavated. So all I needed to do was go to the earliest referenced findings. So they thought those were the first pyramids, and that would be Tikal, and take a picture of the overhead plan, look at my template of the stars of the Pleiades, and it hits you right in the face. There it is, black and white, clear as daylight. Same template being repeated by the Maya, and that was the beginning of the Maya story.
And you say in your book there is a commonality between the Tikal pyramids and the anomalies found on Mars?
Yeah, now this is apparently History Channel have showed the footage. I've had a look at it on the internet. They sneaked a bit of my finding out and just put it in with their story on the, I think it was called Ancient Aliens, on History Channel, covering ancient astronaut theory. And they used it as well on there without any reference, but I'm trying to find out how that happened. But never mind. The pyramids, so-called pyramid ruins on Mars, I heard of probably 10 years after I had got into this research. So this was like the last part of it, that these pyramids on Mars. I mean, goodness gracious, that sounds far-fetched. I got hold of the magazine that had the Hoagland story in it, and there it was, photographs of what looked like a human face and a grouping of pyramids near it. And, how hard is it just to compare that to, again, that's the pattern you've already used to it. I could just see there the Pleiades basically laid out on the Martian surface. The exit marks the spot is the Mars face. And I was amazed that when I did the actual overlay, I've done it now on a YouTube video, I've shown a proper transparency overlay of the Mars pyramids and the Pleiades stars on a star atlas program, and do a time regression where it goes back in time to see how the X fits the spot. The little sun-like star fits the position on the Mars face beautifully. But that is the most accurate star map. And in the cluster of pyramids of the Pleiades, there are tiny little stars in there, groupings of about 20 little tiny stars that match tiny anomalies around the pyramid. So we have, we're talking about, 27, 28 correlations in one group that are all size appropriate.
Now, you took transparencies of these constellations and laid them over these sites, correct?
Mainly on the Mars one. I wasn't that fortunate at the beginning to have satellite images as we do now with Google Earth and that. So I was getting, bits and pieces of the map and sticking it on the lounge floor and then trying to, join the dots and use pieces of paper as tracings. But the Mars one came late, and I had a beautiful piece of cellophane material, put it over, and just got a Koki pen and marked out all the points. And I've made a YouTube video of it to show people, and it looks just too good to be true. It's amazing.
Now, in the 1968 classic Chariot of the Gods, written by Eric Van Daniken, he talks along the same kind of lines. Now, how is your research different?
Well, you know what? It's just technology. I had more to reference. I also, as I said, had this template already in my mind that I had to go and find. So it's not much different other than I believe I've presented more evidence, because there's not just five pyramid groups or 5 star maps. We're talking about at least 23 different accounts all over the world, every single part of the globe's beginnings, obsessed in 4 or 5 similar things, all the same around the world. It's like finding the discovery of the wheel. They all built pyramids. Goodness gracious, I mean, these things are monstrous. What would cause people to all do the same thing and speak of these visitors that came down from the sky as gods that had this technology that we call magic, and just seeing those templates? And even the African civilization has amazing records on wooden tablets here in South Africa, finding those as well from another researcher, presenting them to me and showing me, look, here's your star map. And this is in the Zambia tribe, the Chokwe tribe, and they've done the same thing. They've even got symbols on the wooden tablets that are Egyptian, and they show the sacred cross as the Maltese cross. I mean, yeah, these sort of correlations, somebody's coming from the sky and telling the same story to all different cultures around the world at all different times, and that's the only answer I can give for that.
Now, your research takes us back 17,000 years ago in France, where you claim the oldest star map is found.
Mm-hmm.
And do you want to go there next? I feel like we're taking a trip around the world. Which site now?
I think the best examples to compare for that measuring time is there's 3 of the best star maps. Obviously, the one on Mars is the most accurate. Because it's slightly more geometric as well. If you take the picture of the star area of the Pleiades and the 3 sun-like stars and then look at what was on Mars, the Mars layout makes it more geometric. It's something that looked like a trapezium. Believe me, they laid it out on the ground as a trapezium. Something had an equilateral kind of correlation between 3 stars. When they did it on Cydonia and on Mars, they did it exactly as an equilateral. But putting that picture, the Stonehenge picture, this is another amazing sort of thing. We have Stonehenge connecting into the story. Same thing, look from above, across the valley from Stonehenge, what do we find? There's a huge cluster of mounds that match the Pleiades. Taking the Stonehenge, Tikal, and Mars, those 3 together, and making the exit marks the spot, and then putting it on the star atlas and watching the little star move into place around about 17,000 years ago. And it doesn't just fit in the middle of the exit marks the spot. It actually lands in the position, for example, where the Mars face is, on the middle of the forehead. And on the forehead of Mars, what NASA recently announced was, this is not a face, it's got a nose coming out of his forehead. It's got a little pyramid ruin and the all-seeing eye part of the forehead. Pretty much like Abasir, you've got this small little obelisk coming out of a big pyramid. They built this little pyramid thing on top of the Mars face to show that's the point, perhaps a dual teaching, showing the power of the soul, the third eye, and they put it on the forehead. It's amazing stuff, and there's a message obviously embedded in all this, and it's simple as that. This is who we are and where we come from.
So in a nutshell, what do you believe they found on Mars?
Well, on Mars so far, this strange, I'm a conspiracy theorist now because of so many things that should really prove Mars was not only once like the Earth with oceans and life as we know it on there. Obviously now it's destroyed, but they're finding methane, they're finding frozen oceans. All these big discoveries are not even getting airtime. I believe that they found perhaps even moss growing on Mars. There's some green patches that are in an area where there's a lot of water and liquid running water from a spring, perhaps, things like this that are being found on Mars. But the pictures, again, of the area of Cydonia, particularly the Mars face, in high resolution. I have the image uploaded on my website. It was a massive, massive downloading image to process it and enhance it and show what the debris field is like on the whole of the face of Mars. It is covered with thousands of oblong rocks. I mean, how do you get the same debris field everywhere around the Mars face, all being oblong-shaped rocks? I'm sorry, those are not just rocks. I think they're blocks.
Now, Richard Hoagland is usually the one who seems to kind of monopolize this theory. Has he heard of your Cydonia findings?
Well, I've sent him emails. He never really replies, but the image is online, so people can look at the 4 megabyte picture. And I'm even saying, printed as a poster. So it's a beautiful picture to put on your wall, and to see all those little blocks all over the show and the patterns of block layouts, they're all sort of linear. They all sort of go the same direction. Richard hasn't really said that much on it. He's more interested in the latest theory on what's on the back of the moon. So I can't really say much for what's happening with Richard's theory, but his side perhaps has gone a bit quiet. I'm not sure.
Yeah. And are your pictures of Mars the same as those that have been released by NASA?
Well, no, because the Mars face picture that they released was at an obscure angle. It also had the sun when it was directly overhead. It doesn't give you a 3D interpretation. I had to go one step further and take the original Viking template of light and shadow and overlay that on the new one to show it more three-dimensional. So it has been altered by scientific means to get the three-dimensional aspects purely by light and shadow and color. I've also added color, knowing that area, what the color of the area is like. So I've made it full color, full shadow, full 3D. There's a very visible, I think it's the left eye is visible on the Mars face. It's really speaking a real ancient anomaly, and it's something that has been built. It is not just a natural formation. I'm 99.99% sure of that.
So do you think that, again, we find here some kind of conspiracy or cover-up by NASA so that this doesn't become public?
I would have to say yes, now that I've studied the secret society aspect of the star map. I mean, lo and behold, the biggest beginning of Freemasonry comes from the Hiram Abiff story. Hiram Abiff was murdered for a secret that he had, and Freemasonry starts with the first-degree tracing board. And what is it? It's a star map. It's got north, south, west, east on it. It shows the horizon. It shows pillars on the ground marking, as in the Jacob's Ladder story, monuments matching the heavens. And what do we see in the heavens? There's a grouping of 7 stars, and there are 3 orbs, call them. They've adapted the interpretation in Freemasonry as sun, moon, and star, but they're all the same size, and they're all in the same depiction. You can't have the sun shining and stars visible, for example. They're all actually a picture of space, and there's a ladder coming down from the star, the most important one, in the right place. And this is what we find in the Symbologist, the same phenomenon of a beam of light coming down from it to terra firma. They've matched it completely. And if this is the case of secret society having the same secret, we've got to wonder, why are they covering the secret? And there is an answer. There's a really clear, although it's simple, bit of a disappointing answer, but there is a very obvious, clear motive over the last 2 millennia to keep it hidden.
What do you think that is?
Yeah, I was waiting for you to say that. Well, it's a bit of a letdown for a lot of conspiracy theorists. It's simply showing equality of humanity. In every ancient civilization, they have the same teachings that we humans are descendant of angelic seed, or call it the gods, these visitors, but obviously they're not gods. They're just advanced technology ancestors. And by just that simple fact that we all have the same teaching, that we're all descendant of this lineage that is sacred, human life should be sacred. You can't have slavery. You can't go and conquer a nation and take their people and enslave them and take their wealth. There's certain law that fits in with this. And by habit, over the centuries, elite society has hidden it only for their members, their highest people. And Joe Average, in walking the streets, never got to hear about it, as it is today. It's still a forbidden topic. Only recently all these documents came out. For example, the Freemason Tracing Board, the university in the UK, the Bradford University, released a historical version of it, and that was where I found that beautiful star map. And the Vatican seems to have it. The land of Washington, D.C. is repeating the same star pattern. And would you believe that one of the sun-like stars on Mars is a 5-sided pyramid? And what do we have on Earth? In Washington, D.C., we have the Pentagon in that position. We have an Egyptian obelisk, and the X that marks the spot. That's the... I mean, how are we getting all these coincidences? You look at it on a video flowing, as I have in the YouTube video, where one template flows into the other. It just seems so obvious and so stupid that we've missed all this. But these are big layout plans, and this is what is a twist to the story. And this is quite shocking that all this evidence that we have in ancient civilizations was not directed for us. The people that have descended from this lineage. It's actually it's facing skywards, for heaven's sakes. This message is pointing out into deep space. This is who we are, where we come from. Now think about that. Is it like the proverbial flag of America on the moon, showing this is who we are, where we come from? We've now conquered the moon. It's almost like showing the Earth has been conquered by the human lineage, and the message sending out to space to other other modern entities out there in the cosmos using giant telescopes will be able to see the pattern and do the star map comparison and see that these are humans. They came from the Pleiades area, stars, blah, blah, blah. It's kind of like our blueprint. This is our fingerprint of our ancestors.
What a wonderful message. I really got chills when you were talking. HiddenRecords.com, his book, The Hidden Records. I highly suggest you order a copy. It's one of the most easy to read reference books. It's something you can mark and keep and take out whenever you have to do your own research. Now, when you went to these sites, did you feel an intuitive hit? Because one of the things I've noticed, because I do tours to different sites and I travel extensively myself, when I go to these sites, we get, and many people have experienced the same thing, these kinds of intuitive hits, so if you will, when they're walking through the places or when they just see the symbols themselves, people begin this process of remembering and recall, and they have these overwhelming emotional experiences of some kind of familiarity to what they're feeling. Was that common did that happen to you when you first started to put all of this stuff together?
I have to agree. It's like a deja vu experience. I've been here, and I recognize this. And from my unique sort of cosmic experience, having been at a place where I believe the Akashic records are, this cosmic tree, I just assumed that it was that's imprinted in my mind, and I'm simply seeing those patterns and reproductions of tomb walls, etc., etc. But there's a more logical explanation for it. These are empires that went through thousands of years, lots of human life occupying the area, thousands and thousands of human lives that perhaps have reincarnated like us later, and it could be a past life where we've seen this kind of thing, and it feels like, gee, I recognize this tomb, I recognize this street. I believe that if you want to experience a deja vu experience, there's quite a good probability out of, let's just say, I'm not going to really guess now, out of 20 people, at least one out of 20 people have probably lived a time space in Egypt if we keep coming back to learn our story and haven't succeeded, because it's kind of I believe in the reincarnation thing, that we keep coming back until we learn sacredness of oneness of everything, and from then on we could pass to better worlds, better paradise out there in the cosmos, call it going to heaven, living in paradisial worlds where there's less strife like we have here on Earth. I think we keep coming back here until we learn how to look after it, and we're not doing a good job at the moment, are we?
Well, I have to, and you know that I was just recently in Santa Fe with the Native American elders who talk about a prophecy of the starseed children returning in reincarnation at this particular point in time to assist with the 2012, the alignments of this knowledge coming out publicly in the way that you're doing it, the way that, I do it with the show by bringing people like you on so that you can talk and you have a platform and you can share your message with as many listeners that are here. And I agree with your theory that we come back to learn, but I also think that you included are here to bring this message out to the world in a really big way so that we can help remember our origins and where we really come from. And there's a lot of foo-foo kind of new agey woo-woo stuff that goes on with these things. And I think that clearing that debris from theories like this and for you to go out and put yourself on a limb, so to speak, and say, hey, this is what I have discovered. And even though it goes against a lot of conventional thinking, and quote traditional history, it really opens people's eyes when they start to use common sense and intuition to look at these things and say, wow, I mean, the star maps that you have in this book are phenomenal. They're clear, they're concise, you can see the connections between these places. And China, you covered China in your book, and I was amazed to see how many pyramid ruins there actually are in China that have really are very, very rarely talked about publicly. Did you actually get to travel to China to see those sites?
I'm afraid not. It's again one of these places where you're not really welcome. The pyramid story was pretty much hidden until the last 10 years when people that actually stumbled upon them, flying over them, etc. There's a massive group of at least 60 pyramids in the whole of the area of Xi'an, X-I-A-N, Xi'an. Groupings of pyramids that, I must be honest, I can't figure out a pattern out of it, because a lot of them have been excavated and used for material. So the pattern is diminished, but there's still at least 60 of them left, and they're pretty big. Not as steep-sided, but they are nevertheless four-sided pyramids, and there's a lot of them.
Yeah, and I thought the pictures that you included were really, really wonderful pictures. So we're going into the last bit of our show, and I really feel like we could probably talk for several hours on this topic, and very important information. But you most recently have been talking about the Solomon Key Parchment breakthrough. So what is that for people who have not heard of that?
Yeah, that's going to be really big on, I believe, on the 15th of September. This is probably the most amazing pictogram. It's a cipher that has got a star put together in a talisman. And there's a collection of records called the Clavicular Solemnise records in the British Library. And it's a collection of esoteric Hebrew-based talismans that have basically evolved through the whole of Europe. And there's Latin versions, there's Italian versions, different languages of these talismans, but it has evolved, it has changed a lot. But if you go to the earliest records in this manuscript of the Key of Solomon, you'll find the Hebrew Parchment reproduction. And there are two talismans. There's one on the left of it, which has what looks like the double cross, the sacred cross of Orion, I believe it is. And in the talisman itself, for the first time ever, and this was quite a breakthrough for me about four years ago, when I saw that Orion was so well reproduced in the talisman, that this is amazing. I needed to now just figure out the rest of it. And there's actually 3 or 4 pieces, and people can see the animation. I've got it on YouTube and on keyofsolomon.net. The animation of putting the pieces together. It has the 2 suns on each side being sunrise and sunset. It shows where this little exit marks a spot in the middle of the talisman. It has a beam of light coming down from it, just like the Egyptian tomb, just like the Freemason document. It has reference to another group of stars that shows all around the outer rim little pieces of the puzzle. This is the actual puzzle part of it. It has 8 stars with little lines coming out of them. Now, to an astronomer, seeing a star with any line sticking out of it, seeing a star, with a little line piece coming out of it, it's a constellation piece. All you've got to do is put the sequence of the puzzle together, and lo and behold, the Pleiades. We've got Orion pointing to the star. It's got the alignment. It's on the ecliptic between the sunrise and sunset. It shows, now this is an amazing part on this one. This is the planet side of it. It shows 4 little round dots around the star. And what else can that be? To me, planets. You've got to have planets if you're looking for our ancestors. You can't live in a star. So the whole thing fits together with a unique orientation match as well. You can see the position of Orion is when it's depicted in the west. You can see the Pleiades is in the same upright position, a leg standing upright when it's on the horizon in the east. To the ancients, for some reason, they seem to worship, they worshiped them over time, but they revered them in the beginning as the place of their ancestors. But over time, we've evolved and sadly diminished by worshiping these things, worshiping the bull, it's just crazy. But it evolved into sun worship. They're worshiping these stars rising in the east. Remember, the Sphinx is watching the horizon east. All these monuments have causeways that align east, same with Stonehenge. And they're all watching the rising of these stars being reborn, so to speak, and that's the place where they measure them. In Washington, D.C., the 3 stars of Orion on the 15th of September, this is amazing. Dan Brown was smack on target here. He figured out as well, a Christian holiday, 15th of September, they celebrated the elevation of the cross. It's the acknowledgement of Christ's story being attached to Orion as the sacred cross. These are all really powerful statements, but the Key of Solomon parchment puts all that together in one whole story. It's probably the biggest chapter of Dan Brown's book. I gave it to him 2 years ago. I sent it to his literary agent, Heidi Lang. They said, look, we don't accept things from other people. Now, I knew that would be the protocol, so I just left it with him and expected to at least hear from Dan if he got a chance to see it. But it's been very silent. Maybe he's going to do his spin on it. Maybe he's not. But this pictogram cipher is the biggest thing for Dan Brown kind of books. So let's wait and see. It all ties in with Washington. It all ties in with the Vatican. It all ties in with the Freemason secret. People just have to see how these four patterns, there's four repeating star patterns in four different places, all show the same thing. And it is the Bethlehem star. It's the star of King David. The star of David? It's not a symbolic star. These are real stars. And then, of course, the grand finale, the Solomon, that's called the Testament of King Solomon. There's a codex, a document of King Solomon telling his story. And what does he speak of? He speaks of all the stars along the Milky Way, and he speaks of the area in Tartarus, Taurus, isn't it? Even the names they're giving these areas are being depicted, and he mentions the star of, I think they use the word in ancient Hebrew, Wayne. It sounds like my name, which is pretty unique. I really couldn't believe that, but anyway, that's just a coincidence. But they speak of the star. There are no such
thing as coincidences, by the way. I must interrupt you there and say, sorry, not on the show. No such thing as coincidences. I want to mention to everybody listening, if you're interested in more of this, like I've already said, in his book he covers the basics, and then he does have on his website many new star maps added in 2008 and 2009, and you can do the research yourself. Don't take my word for it, don't take anybody's word for it. Do it for yourself and keep looking and find that feverish kind of curiosity that keeps you looking for answers, because you will find them. And Wayne, as we come to a close, we have about 2 minutes left in the show. Are you speaking anywhere? Do you have any events going on where people can see more or hear more of your research and your work?
Well, you know what? We've had so many strange things happen to the book project. I've actually run at a loss just keeping the book project alive. We don't know what to do next, to be quite honest, because of all the things that have gone wrong. I'm waiting now for the 15th of September. I'm waiting for Dan to create the interest in the subject, and then I'm going to relaunch it again. And it's also a matter of seeing that he uses the material, and I can show the sources. So if I get that opportunity to show that I was part of the finding of the Solomon key, for example, I mean, that's going to be a relaunch of my book. So I'm just holding thumbs and waiting now.
You heard it here first, guys. You can check this out before Dan Brown hits the stands. You can do the research yourself. You can read Wayne's book. You can help support somebody who, in my opinion, has really cracked the code on these. And I'm very impressed. And I just want to say thanks so much for joining me here live in the middle of the night in South Africa. I woke you up before the show, and I know you had your coffee, and I appreciate everything that you've added and contributed tonight. And so in closing, Wayne, what has all of this work taught you on a personal level, in a nutshell?
Yeah, how small and insignificant humanity is, how arrogant humanity is, and if we don't change our ways shortly, I'd like to round up with the most important part, and this is now an emotional part, is having that near-death experience at this cosmic tree, realizing what we are doing that is wrong, what we're doing to fellow humans, causing billions to suffer right now while we speak, that are homeless, that are being victims of our system and our ways and our greed and the power that controls wealth and resources. This must change now. The proverbial end of the world might even be on our doorstep in 2012 if we don't show hope to be saved from what I believe is an impact event. The wormwood reference in the biblical text might come to pass if we don't show some sort of effort to relieve this human suffering and human manipulation. And that was frightening to learn something like that. And, we're right on that doorstep. It's 2 years away, for Pete's sake. We need to relook at all this stuff.
Well, on those words, we close the show tonight. And everybody listening, you can do something about it. And it's time to wake up.